The wind howled across the Wyoming plains like a wounded animal, dragging with it the smell of dust and rain. The sun had vanished hours ago behind a curtain of storm clouds, and the world seemed to pulse with an uneasy silence, right before the first thunder cracked open the night. Eli Turner urged his horse, Daisy, forward through the driving rain, her hooves striking the wet earth with desperate rhythm. The storm wasn't the only thing chasing him. Something else, something unseen, was out there in the dark. Eli had been out searching for his scattered cattle since dusk. The herd had broken loose after a deep rumble rolled through the valley, so deep it felt alive, as though the earth itself had growled. He'd seen stampedes before, but this was different. The cows hadn't run away from something, they'd run in every direction, wild-eyed and frenzied. In the silence that followed, it was the kind that made even seasoned ranchers like Eli glance over their shoulders. By the time he reached the old Turner barn, the rain was coming down hard, drumming against the wooden walls like gunfire. Lightning split the sky, flashing white across the open fields and throwing the barn's crooked roof into sharp relief. Eli swung down from his saddle, his boots sinking into the mud, and led Daisy inside. The smell of hay and wet leather filled his nostrils, a smell that should have brought comfort, but tonight it felt wrong. The air was thick with something else, fear. A soft noise came from the corner of the barn. Eli froze. His hand instinctively went to the revolver holstered at his hip. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice rough and low. There was a pause, then a trembling whisper, "It's me." Eli stepped closer, holding up the lantern. The light fell across a pale face, half hidden behind a stack of feed sacks. Her hair was wet, her dress torn, and blood streaked down her arm. Clara, the sheriff's daughter. She looked nothing like the bright, laughing girl who used to stop by the ranch years ago. Her eyes were wide, haunted, and she was shivering so violently that the lantern light trembled with her. "Clara, what in God's name are you doing here?" he said, setting the lantern on a beam. "Your pa been looking for you since." "Don't tell him I'm here," she interrupted, her voice sharp but weak. "Please, Eli, you can't." He knelt beside her. "You're hurt." She pulled her arm closer, hiding it under her torn sleeve. "It's nothing." "That's not nothing. Let me see." For a moment, she refused, but then, with tears glistening in her eyes, she slowly unbuttoned the sleeve. The fabric clung to her skin, soaked through with blood and something else, a blackish fluid that smelled of metal and rot. When she finally peeled it away, Eli felt his stomach twist. The wound wasn't clean or straight. It looked like something had chewed through her flesh. Deep, jagged, raw. He swallowed hard. "What did this to you?" Clara looked down at the dirt floor, her lips trembling. "I don't know," she whispered. "It wasn't an animal." Eli frowned. "You mean a man?" Her eyes darted up to meet his, and for a brief, horrifying moment, he saw pure terror there. "No," she said, her voice cracking. "It wasn't human either." The wind howled through the cracks in the barn, rattling the walls. The lantern flickered, and for a heartbeat the shadows around them seemed to shift, too slow, too alive. Eli stood and poured some whiskey over the wound. Clara winced, biting back a cry. "You need a doctor," he said. "If that's infected." "No," she snapped, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. "No one can know I'm here. They'll come for me. The men who did this, they'll come for you too." He tried to reason with her, but she was shaking her head, muttering under her breath. "It's spreading," she whispered. "I can feel it crawling under my skin." He took a cautious step closer. "Clara, what do you mean?" She looked up at him suddenly, her eyes wild. "I'll take it off," she said. "Just do it, please." Eli froze. "Take what off?" "My arm," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Before it reaches my heart." The words hung between them, heavier than the storm outside. Eli stared at her, trying to make sense of what she was saying, but then lightning flashed again, bright and searing, and in that moment, he saw it clearly. The veins around her wound had turned black, snaking up toward her shoulder like spreading ink. The flesh pulsed with faint movement, like something beneath her skin was alive. He stumbled back, his heart pounding. "Clara, what happened to you?" Her voice was almost gone now, just a whisper lost in the storm. "It wasn't an animal," she said again, trembling. "It was one of them." Thunder cracked so close it shook the rafters. The lantern's flame fluttered, then steadied, casting both of their faces in a dim, trembling glow. Outside, the wind wailed like 1,000 voices in pain. Inside, Eli Turner stood motionless, staring at the girl he thought he knew, and realizing that something ancient and terrible had followed her here. And whatever it wasn't finished. The sound of rain against the barn roof was relentless, a steady drumming that mixed with Clara's ragged breathing. Eli Turner stood frozen, his hunting knife in hand, the metal glinting dully in the flickering light of the lantern. The air inside the barn felt thick, like it was holding its breath. Outside, thunder rumbled low and distant, but Eli barely heard it over the pounding of his own heart. Clara sat on the hay-covered floor, her pale face slick with sweat. Her arm, if you could still call it that, was swollen and blackened up to the shoulder. The infection had spread fast, crawling beneath her skin like veins of living coal. The smell of rot was heavy now, burning the back of his throat. "You have to cut it off," she said again, voice trembling but certain. "Please, Eli, before it's too late." He shook his head, pacing back and forth. "You don't know what you're asking me to do." "I do," she whispered. "You think I don't feel it? It's crawling through me. It burns, Eli, like it's alive inside me." Eli looked down at his knife. The handle was worn smooth from years of use, skinning cattle, trimming leather, cutting rope. But never this. Never someone. He rubbed a hand over his face, the coarse stubble scratching his palm. "You need a doctor, not me. I ain't trained for this." Her voice broke as she said, "If you wait, I'll die. And not the way you think." Something in her tone made him stop. He turned, staring at her. "What do you mean?" She looked up, tears cutting clean lines through the dirt on her cheeks. "It's not just a wound, Eli. It's a curse." He wanted to laugh, or curse, or run, but her eyes were so full of terror that the words stuck in his throat. He'd seen madness before, miners who'd stayed too long underground, soldiers haunted by the war, but this was different. This was real fear, the kind that came from seeing something beyond what a person was meant to. Eli knelt down beside her. "Tell me what happened." Her breath hitched. "There was an opening in the ground, out by Miller's Gorge. Pa said it was just an old mine, but there was something down there. We went in, me and the others, looking for gold. The walls, they weren't right. They moved, Eli. They breathed." Her voice cracked on the word. "And then something grabbed me. I felt its teeth, but it wasn't a creature. It was like the darkness itself took a bite." Eli stared at her, chilled to the bone. The thunder cracked again, closer this time, as if the storm itself was listening. Clara groaned and clutched her arm. The veins were pulsing faster now, black and glistening. "Please," she whispered through gritted teeth. "Just do it, before I turn into one of them." Eli's stomach twisted. He didn't want to believe her, but deep down, a voice whispered that she wasn't lying. He'd seen strange things in the West, bones buried in dry creeks, cattle found with their insides missing, lights in the distance that weren't from lanterns. But this was worse. He swallowed hard and turned to the fire pit at the back of the barn. The coals still glowed faintly from earlier, red and breathing like the heart of a dying beast. He tossed in a few splinters of dry wood and pumped the bellows until the fire came roaring back to life. Clara's eyes followed him, white and wet. "Thank you," she whispered, tears spilling over. He didn't answer. He just picked up the knife and held the blade over the flame. The metal hissed, turning orange, then red. The smell of hot iron filled the barn. He looked at her one last time. "You sure about this?" Her reply was barely audible. "Do it." He took a deep breath, gripping her arm just above the infected flesh. Her skin was hot, unnaturally hot. He pressed the blade down. The scream that tore from her throat was like nothing he'd ever heard. It wasn't just pain, it was something deeper, like the sound of a soul being ripped apart. Eli's vision blurred, his hands slick with sweat and blood. He wanted to stop, but he couldn't. The knife cut through muscle and sinew, the sound thick and wet. When it was done, he stumbled back, shaking. Clara slumped forward, pale as ash, her body trembling. Eli wrapped what was left of her arm in a strip of cloth, tying it off tight to stop the bleeding. He pressed his coat around her shoulders, whispering, "It's over. You're safe now." But as he turned to toss the bloody knife aside, something caught his eye. The severed arm, lying in the dirt, twitched. At first, he thought it was a trick of the firelight. Then the fingers began to curl, one by one, slow and deliberate. Eli froze, his breath caught in his throat. The movement was wrong, mechanical, intentional. "Clara," he whispered, voice shaking. Her eyes fluttered open. "It's not dead," she breathed. The arm convulsed, twisting, the black veins spreading across the floor like cracks in glass. A low hiss came from the stump, a sound that made Eli's skin crawl. He stumbled backward, knocking over the lantern. The flame hit the hay, and in seconds, fire raced up the wooden posts. The barn exploded with light, the smoke choking the air. Clara's voice broke through the roar of the flames. "Eli, run!" And as he pulled her toward the door, dragging her through smoke and fire, he looked back one last time, just long enough to see the impossible. The severed arm was no longer just an arm. It was growing. The fire raged behind them, turning the night into a swirling inferno of orange and black. Eli dragged Clara out through the mud, both of them choking on smoke. Rain poured down in sheets, hissing as it met the flames, but the barn still burned like something hell itself had lit. The storm was still growling across the plains, lightning flashing above the dark horizon, each strike revealing fragments of chaos, the horses screaming in their pens, the wind whipping up embers, and somewhere inside that fire, something alive was screaming back. Eli dropped to his knees beside Clara in the mud, his chest heaving. Her skin was pale, her body limp in his arms. He looked back at the burning barn and froze. Through the rolling smoke, he saw movement. At first, he thought it was the roof collapsing, but then it stepped forward. A shape. Human, almost. The thing crawled out of the flames on all fours, blackened flesh glistening wet in the firelight. It was her severed arm, but no longer just that. It had grown, twisted, reshaping itself into something monstrous. Bones stretched where fingers used to be, ribs cracked outward like insect legs, and a head, if you could call it that, was forming from the meat. Eli couldn't move. His blood turned to ice. "Clara," he whispered, shaking her gently. "Clara, look at me." Her eyelids fluttered. She was barely conscious, her lips trembling as she whispered, "It's the curse, it's not just me. It'll come for everything." Eli swallowed hard, glancing back toward the creature. It was crawling toward them, dragging its half-formed body through the mud. Its face, or what should have been one, was a shifting mask of muscle and smoke. He could hear it breathing. He pulled his revolver from his holster and fired once, then twice. The shots echoed across the plains, cutting through the storm, but the thing didn't stop. The bullets passed through it as though it were made of mist and sinew. "God help us," Eli muttered. He scooped Clara into his arms and stumbled toward the open field, his boots sinking deep in the muck. He didn't look back until he reached the edge of the pasture. When he did, his heart nearly stopped. The creature wasn't chasing them. It was standing, if such a thing could stand, half inside the fire, half out. The flames twisted around it, feeding on it, but it didn't burn. It only grew taller, its long limbs stretching toward the sky like black vines. And for a moment, just before lightning struck nearby, Eli saw faces inside its form, human faces. Screaming, he turned away, clutching Clara tighter. "Hold on," he whispered. "We're getting out of here." But she shook her head weakly. "It's too late for me." "Don't say that. You don't understand," she gasped, her breath shallow. "It came from the mine. The old one out by Miller's Gorge. They opened something that was never meant to be touched. The men who went down there, they're gone, Eli. Gone, but not dead." He stared at her. "You're saying this came from underground?" She nodded faintly. "It sleeps down there, it spreads through flesh, through the earth itself. You can't kill it, you have to seal it." Eli glanced back toward the burning barn, where the creature now vanished into the dark, leaving only the glow of embers behind. The wind shifted, carrying with it a sound, a low, distant moan, like the earth itself was crying out. He looked back at Clara, but her eyes were closing. "Clara, stay with me." She smiled faintly, her voice breaking. "Promise me you'll finish it. Before dawn. Or it'll spread to the town." Eli's throat tightened. "I promise." Her fingers slipped from his, and her chest went still. He sat there in the rain for a long time, the world eerily quiet now except for the soft crackle of dying fire. The barn was gone. The storm had eased. But in that silence, Eli felt something else, a vibration beneath his feet. A faint pulse, like the land itself was breathing. By dawn, he had buried Clara beneath the old oak tree near the pasture, marking her grave with her silver hairpin. He didn't say much, just a few words about mercy, about how she didn't deserve what happened. Then he saddled Daisy, slung his rifle across his back, and looked toward the horizon. Miller's Gorge lay 15 miles east. The old mine there had been sealed decades ago after a collapse that killed 12 men. Folks said it was cursed, that the earth there wasn't right. Eli had never believed those stories, until now. As the morning light broke through the clouds, he rode toward the gorge. The plains were silent, too silent. No birds, no cattle, not even whined through the grass. Just a strange hum rising from somewhere deep beneath the ground. When he finally reached the edge of the gorge, he saw it, a black hole in the rock face, whiter than he remembered. Smoke still drifted from within, faintly glowing like dying embers. And there, at the entrance, lay fresh footprints, human-shaped, but too long, too thin. Eli dismounted, chambered around in his rifle, and stared into the darkness. He could feel it, something watching him from deep inside. He took a breath, whispering to himself, "You took her. You took my land. You ain't taking anyone else." Then he stepped into the mine. The echo of his boots faded into the dark, swallowed by the earth. The wind died completely. And somewhere deep below, the thing that had once been human began to stir, waiting for him.